ఇప్పుడు నేను ప్రతిరోజు 15 ఇయర్స్ గవర్నమెంట్ జాబ్ లో చేస్తున్నాను. క్రిటికల్ గా క్రూషియల్ గా ఉన్న ప్రతి పేషెంట్ ఎవ్వరికి కూడా సైన్స్ గురించి గాని, డిసీజ్ గురించి గాని, ట్రీట్మెంట్ గురించి గాని వాళ్ళకి అవసరం లేదు. వాళ్ళకు ఏదో ఒక రా రిలీఫ్ కావాలి. ఒక అంటే కాళ్ళకు దారం కట్టుకోవడమో, లేకపోతే ఇంకా ఏదో ప్రేయర్స్ చేయడమో, లేకపోతే ఇంకేదో మంత్రాలు వేయించుకుంటే తగ్గుతది అనే భ్రమలోనే ఇప్పటికి కూడా సమాజం ఉండడం అనేది చాలా బాధాకరం. అలాంటి సిట్యుయేషన్ లో అప్పుడే సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ ఎస్టాబ్లిష్ చేయడం కోసము అంత కృషి చేసిన పిఎం భార్గవ గారి గురించి మనము ఇవాళ మాట్లాడుకోవడం అనేది చాలా ముఖ్యము. సమాజంలో సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ ని తీసుకెళ్లడం అనేది ప్రతి ఒక్కరి బాధ్యత. అట్లీస్ట్ చదువుకున్న వాళ్ళందరి బాధ్యత అని నా భావన. ఎందుకంటే చదువుకున్న వాళ్ళు కూడా సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ లేకుండానే బ్రతుకుతున్నారు ఎక్కువ వరకు. సో దానికి విరుద్ధంగా మన విజ్ఞాన దర్శిని ఎన్నో కార్యక్రమాలు చేస్తోంది. సైన్స్ అంటే ఓన్లీ పుస్తకాలలో చదివేది, లేకపోతే ఏదో స్కూల్లో టీచర్ మార్క్స్ కోసము, డిగ్రీల కోసం చదివేది మాత్రమే కాదు. సైన్స్ ఇస్ పార్ట్ ఆఫ్ అవర్ లివింగ్ అనేది ప్రజల్లోకి తీసుకెళ్లగలిగితే మాత్రమే రియల్ సైన్స్ అనేది ఏంటనేది వాళ్ళకి అర్థమవుతుంది. అప్పుడే ఇట్లాంటి మోసకారుల, లేకపోతే ఇట్లా అన్సైంటిఫిక్ ప్రొపగాండా చేసే వాళ్ళ ఉచ్చులో పడకుండా ప్రజల్ని మనం కాపాడగలుగుతాము. సో ఈ సందర్భాన్ని ఉద్దేశించి మాట్లాడమని ముందుగా నేను మన విజ్ఞాన దర్శిని ఫౌండర్ ప్రెసిడెంట్ రమేష్ గారిని కోరుతున్నాను.
సారీ, మ్యూట్ లో. ఓకే, జయరాజ్ గారు మీ వీడియో ఆఫ్ చేయండి సార్. మిగతా వాళ్ళు వీడియో ఆఫ్ చేయండి. ఓకే, జయరాజ్ గారు మీరు కూడా వీడియో ఆఫ్ చేయండి. ఫ్రెండ్స్, ఈరోజు విజ్ఞాన దర్శిని భార్గవ గారి వర్ధంతి సందర్భంగా ఈ వెబినార్ని నిర్వహిస్తున్నది. డాక్టర్ పిఎం భార్గవ అర్ధ శతాబ్ద కాలం క్రితమే, శతాబ్దంలో సగ శతాబ్దం అంటే అది ఎంత సుదీర్ఘమైన కాలమో ఒక మనిషి జీవితంలో మనకు తెలుసు. ఒక తరంలో కూడా, అంటే స్వతంత్రం వచ్చి మనకి ఇప్పుడు అమృత మహోత్సవాలు జరుపుకుంటున్నాం 70 ఏళ్ళు. సో స్వతంత్రం వచ్చిన ఒక కొత్త దశలోనే, ఒక నా యవ్వన దశలోనే, అప్పటికి 50 ఏళ్ల క్రితమే, 47 ఏళ్ల క్రితమే, అంటే దాదాపు ఒక అర్ధ శతాబ్దం క్రితమే సెల్యులార్ అండ్ మాలిక్యులర్ బయాలజీ యొక్క ఫ్యూచర్ని ఏ విధంగా జెనెటికల్ ఇంజనీరింగ్ ఎంతగా అభివృద్ధి చెందబోతా ఉంది, సో దానిని పట్టుకొని మనము భారతదేశం కూడా అంతర్జాతీయంగా వైజ్ఞానిక రంగంలో ముందు పెట్టి నిలబడాలని. ఎందుకంటే స్వతంత్రోద్యమ కాలంలో ఒకవైపు స్వతంత్రోద్యమం నడుస్తూ ఉంటే, మరొక వైపు వైజ్ఞానికవేత్తలు భారతదేశం స్వతంత్రం సాధించాలని కోరుకుంటూనే ఆ స్వతంత్ర సాధనలో భాగంగా భారతదేశం స్వతంత్రం సాధించిన తర్వాత స్వావలంబన, సైన్స్ రంగంలో, సైన్స్ అండ్ టెక్నాలజీలో స్వావలంబన సాధిస్తూ సెల్ఫ్ రిలయన్స్ లో ముందుకెళ్లాలనే ఉద్దేశంతో ఆనాటి తరము ఆ సైంటిస్టులు దేశభక్తులకు ఒకవైపు స్వతంత్రోద్యమంలో పాల్గొంటూనే మరొక వైపు దీని వైపు కృషి చేశారు. అందులో భాగంగానే ఎప్పుడైతే దేశ స్వతంత్రం వచ్చిందో, మన పాలన వచ్చిందో, మన రాజ్యాంగం అమల్లోకి వచ్చిందో, వెంటనే మన సైంటిస్టులందరూ కూడా ఒక్కొక్కరు ఒక్కొక్క శక్తిగా, ఒక్కొక్క సంస్థగా ఎదిగారు. విక్రమ్ సారాభాయ్ మొత్తం ఆస్ట్రానమీలో ఒక శక్తిగా ఎదిగి ఇస్రో స్థాపనకు కానీ, ఎడ్ల బండి మీద రాకెట్ పరికరాలు తీసుకెళ్తే ఈరోజు మనం అంతరిక్షంలోకి చంద్రయాన్ ద్వారా చంద్రబాబు మీదకి మిషన్స్ పంపగలిగే స్థాయిలోకి తీసుకెళ్లిన దానికి మొదటి బీజం అక్కడ పడింది. అట్లాగే హోమీ జే బాబా అటామిక్ ఎనర్జీ రంగంలో, కెమిస్ట్రీలో మనం చూస్తాం పిసి రే గారిని. అట్లా అనేక మంది అనేక రంగాల్లో కృషి చేశారు. సో ముఖ్యంగా ఈ జెనెటికల్ సైన్స్కి వచ్చినప్పుడు మాత్రం ఈ మాలిక్యులర్ బయాలజీ ఈ విషయాల్లో మాత్రం ఆ విధంగా ఆ స్ఫూర్తితో డాక్టర్ పిఎం భార్గవ ఒక అంతర్జాతీయ సంస్థ ఉండాలని ఆనాటి ప్రధానమంత్రులు వాళ్ళందరితో పోట్లాడి, ఒక రకంగా మాట్లాడడం కాదు, పోట్లాడి ఇది కావాలి అని వాళ్ళని ఒప్పించి మెప్పించి అది ఎక్కడ పెట్టాలంటే ఖచ్చితంగా అది హైదరాబాద్ నగరంలో పెట్టాలని, ఆ హైదరాబాద్ నగరాన్ని అంతర్జాతీయ స్థాయిలోకి తీసుకెళ్లిన వ్యక్తి డాక్టర్ పిఎం భార్గవ. ఇక్కడ ఒక సెంటర్ ఫర్ సెల్యులార్ అండ్ మాలిక్యులర్ బయాలజీ సంస్థను ప్రారంభించి ఆ సంస్థని అంతర్జాతీయ ప్రమాణాలతో ఇక్కడ నెలకొల్పి ఈరోజు మీ అందరికీ, అంతకుముందు అందరికీ అదే సామాన్య జనానికి ఎంత తెలుసో కానీ కరోనా టైంలో అందరూ సిసిఎంబి అని చాలా పెద్ద పాపులర్ అయింది. సో ఆ సంస్థ రావడానికి కారకులు, ఆ విధంగా ఆయన ఫౌండర్ డైరెక్టర్ కూడా. సో ఆ విధంగా మొట్టమొదటి డైరెక్టర్గా కూడా వ్యవహరించి వారు దాన్ని తీసుకొచ్చారు. అంతేకాదు ఆయన సైన్స్ రంగంలో విశేషమైన పరిశోధనలు చేశారు, అనేక పత్రాలు తీసుకొచ్చారు, అనేక మంది సైంటిస్టులని హైదరాబాద్ నగరం నుంచి ప్రొడ్యూస్ చేశారు. ఎంతో మంది నోబెల్ లారెట్స్ ని విదేశాల నుంచి ఇక్కడికి హైదరాబాద్ నగరానికి తీసుకొచ్చి హైదరాబాద్ ఖ్యాతిని అంతర్జాతీయంగా నిలబెట్టేపిన వారిలో డాక్టర్ పిఎం భార్గవ గారు. మరొక వైపు సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ గురించి, సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ ప్రజల్లో ఉండాలని దానికోసం చాలా విస్తృతమైన కృషి చేసి సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ పెరగడానికి ఆయన ఒక సైంటిస్ట్ గా పరిశోధనలు చేస్తూనే, లాబొరేటరీలో పరిశోధనలు చేస్తూనే, అంతర్జాతీయ స్థాయి సెమినార్లు నిర్వహిస్తూనే, అంతర్జాతీయ సెమినార్లో పాల్గొంటూనే ఆ కృషి కొనసాగిస్తూనే మరొక వైపు ఒక కార్యకర్తలాగా సామాన్య జనం చెంతకి సైన్స్ చేరాలని, అందరి జనం దగ్గరికి ప్రజల్లోకి ఆ సైన్స్ తీసుకెళ్ళడానికి ఆయన ప్రజల మధ్యకు వచ్చి ప్రచారం చేసిన వ్యక్తి. మొత్తం ఒక రకంగా చూస్తే సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ గురించి పోరాడిన యోధుడిలాగా ఉంటాడు. చేపమందు అనే ఒక అన్సైంటిఫిక్ అంశాన్ని, అవైజ్ఞానిక అంశాన్ని ప్రభుత్వాలే నెత్తికెత్తుకున్న కాలంలో డాక్టర్ పిఎం భార్గవ గారు డైరెక్ట్ గా నేరుగా ఎగ్జిబిషన్ గ్రౌండ్స్ కి వచ్చి అక్కడ ప్రజల్ని సర్వే చేసి, ఇంటర్వ్యూలు చేసి, అక్కడ ప్రెస్ మీట్లు పెట్టి ఇది అవైజ్ఞానికమైంది, ప్రభుత్వం దీన్ని ప్రోత్సహించకూడదని చెప్పడమే కాకుండా ఆ మందుని శాంపిల్స్ సేకరించి మేము వింటా ల్యాబ్స్ కి పంపించి టెస్ట్ చేసి ఇందులో ఏ విధమైన ఆస్తమాను తగ్గించే మందులు లేవు అని మేము ఒకవైపు ప్రైవేట్ గా నిర్ధారించి, మళ్ళా నేను కోర్టులో వేసి దాన్ని కోర్టు ద్వారా, హైకోర్టు ద్వారా మళ్ళా దాన్ని ల్యాబొరేటరీకి పంపించి అందులో ఏ ఆస్తమాన్ని నివారించే ఏ విధమైన మందులు లేవని తేలి ప్రభుత్వాన్ని హైకోర్టు తన ఇంటీరియం ఆర్డర్స్ లో ఇందులో ఆస్తమాను తగ్గించే మందులు ఉన్నట్టు ఏ విధమైన నిర్ధారణ లేవు అని ప్రచారం చేయమని హైకోర్టు ప్రభుత్వానికి గైడ్ చేయడం, ఈ మొత్తం ఆ ఉద్యమంలో డాక్టర్ పిఎం భార్గవ గారు చాలా కీలకమైన పాత్ర పోషించారు. సో ఇలాంటివి అనేకం. యుద్ధం జరుగుతూ ఉంటే శాంతి కోసం సైన్స్ అనే నినాదంతో శాంతి ర్యాలీని చార్మినార్ నుంచి ఒక ర్యాలీని పెద్ద ఎత్తున వేలాది మందితో నిర్వహించిన దానికి నాయకత్వం వహించి ముందు నిలబడి నడిచిన వ్యక్తి డాక్టర్ పిఎం భార్గవ. అంటే అన్ని రకాలుగా ఒకవైపు సైంటిస్ట్ గా ల్యాబొరేటరీలో కృషి చేస్తూనే, రీసెర్చ్ పేపర్స్ తయారు చేస్తూనే, మరొక వైపు ఈ ప్రయత్నాలన్నీ సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ ని పెంపొందించడానికి ప్రయత్నం చేశారు. ఇంకోవైపు మెథడ్ ఆఫ్ సైన్స్ ని మన విద్యార్థులందరికీ చేర్చాలనే ఉద్దేశంతో, ఎందుకంటే మనం సైన్స్ అంటే ఉప్పు కప్పు రంబునొక పోలిక నుండనే వేమన పద్యాలను ఎట్లయితే బట్టి బట్టి చదువుతున్నామో, సుమతి శతకాలు, భాస్కర శతకాలు ఎట్లయితే మనం బట్టి బట్టి చదువుతున్నామో, బలవంతుడు నాకేమనే అనే పాదాలు ఎట్లయితే పద్యాలు చదువుతా ఉన్నామో, అట్లనే సైన్స్ సూత్రాలను కూడా బట్టి పడుతున్న సందర్భంలో మెథడ్ ఆఫ్ సైన్స్ అనేది ఒకటి ఉంది. ఈ మెథడ్ ఆఫ్ సైన్స్ మన విద్యార్థులందరికీ, మన మొత్తం సమాజానికి, మేధావులకి, చదువుకున్న వాళ్ళందరికీ వెళ్ళాలని దాని మీద తను తీవ్రమైన కృషి చేసి, ఆయన ఏ పని చేసినా అంత కృషి చేస్తారు. సిసిఎంబి ఏర్పాటు అప్పుడు ఇటుక, దానికి కట్టిన ఇటుక నుంచి మొదలు పెడితే, పునాది రాయి నుంచి మొదలు పెడితే ప్రతిదీ ఎలా ఉండాలని దానికోసం రెయిన్బోలు కృషి చేశాడు. ఆ తర్వాత మెథడ్ ఆఫ్ సైన్స్ కోసం ఎక్కడెక్కడి పెయింటర్స్ తీసుకొచ్చి రకరకాల డిజైన్స్ తయారు చేయించి ఆయన స్వయంగా ప్రతిదాన్ని చూసుకుంటూ ఆ విధంగా ఒక పెద్ద ఎగ్జిబిషన్ ని, ప్రపంచ స్థాయి ఎగ్జిబిషన్ ని ఆయన రూపొందించారు. దాన్ని నిజంగా ఆ రోజు ప్రదర్శన పెడితే చాలా ప్రజల్లోకి అది చాలా ప్రతిభావంతంగా వెళ్ళింది. కానీ ఆ తర్వాత ప్రభుత్వాల నిర్లక్ష్యమా లేకపోతే ప్రజల్లో సైంటిఫిక్ భావాలు పెరిగితే, ప్రశ్నించే తత్వం పెరిగితే తమ పీఠాలు కదులుతాయనే ఉద్దేశంతో కావచ్చు, ఏ ఉద్దేశంతో అయినా ఆ కేంద్ర రాష్ట్ర ప్రభుత్వాలు దాన్ని నిర్వీర్యం చేసి తన కళ్ళ ముందే అది పాడైపోతుంటే భార్గవ గారు చివరి క్షణం వరకు దాని గురించి పడ్డ బాధ చందన గారికి, మాలాంటి వారందరికీ తెలుసు. సో అంత సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ ప్రజల్లో ఉండాలని కోరుకున్న వ్యక్తి. అంతేకాదు, భారత రాజ్యాంగంలో ఆర్టికల్ 51H టు డెవలప్ సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్, స్పిరిట్ ఆఫ్ ఎంక్వైరీ, హ్యూమనిజం అండ్ రిఫార్మ్, ఆ వైజ్ఞానిక దృక్పథాన్ని, వైజ్ఞానిక పరిశీలన స్ఫూర్తిని, మానవవాదాన్ని, సంస్కరణాభిలాషను పెంపొందించాలనే ఆ ప్రాథమిక కర్తవ్యం రాజ్యాంగంలో చేరడంలో భార్గవ గారి పాత్ర కూడా మరవరాంది. సో ఇలాంటి అనేక అంశాలు ఆయన పోరాటం గురించి చెప్పాల్సి వస్తే ఎక్కడ కూడా ప్రభుత్వాలకి తలొగ్గకుండా, రాజీ లేకుండా ప్రజల కోసము, ప్రజలలో వైజ్ఞానిక దృక్పథాన్ని పెంపొందించడం కోసం, వైజ్ఞానిక సమాజం కోసం కృషి చేశారు. నేషనల్ నాలెడ్జ్ కమిషన్ వైస్ చైర్మన్ గా ఉంటూ కూడా ప్రభుత్వాలు ప్రజలకి వ్యతిరేకమైన చర్యలు, ముఖ్యంగా విద్యారంగంలో, ఉన్నత విద్యారంగం ప్రజలందరికీ ఉపయోగపడేటట్టు లేకుండా, సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ పెంపొందించకుండా అన్సైంటిఫిక్ గా దాన్ని తయారు చేస్తున్నప్పుడు అతను అంత పెద్ద పదవిని కూడా ఒక రాజీనామా లెటర్ ఇచ్చేసి, ఇలాంటివి అంటే రాజీనామా లెటర్ అంటే ఏదో మామూలుగా అవుతానే రాజీనామా అని కాదు, తను ఎందుకు తాను రాజీనామా చేస్తున్నాడో చాలా క్లియర్ గా, స్పష్టంగా ఈ సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్, సైంటిఫిక్ ఎడ్యుకేషన్ అవసరం ఉంది, దాన్ని మీరు చాలా సైంటిఫిక్ ఎడ్యుకేషన్ చంపుతున్నారు కాబట్టి నేను క్విట్ అవుతున్నా అని చేసి తను క్విట్ అవ్వడం, అక్కడి నుంచి రాజీనామా చేసి రావడం జరిగింది. సో ఆ విధంగా డాక్టర్ పిఎం భార్గవ గారి కృషి నిరంతరం మనం గుర్తుపెట్టుకోవాల్సిన అవసరం ఉంది. అందుకే విజ్ఞాన దర్శిని డాక్టర్ పిఎం భార్గవ గారి స్ఫూర్తితో మేము ఈ కార్యక్రమాలన్నీ నిర్వహిస్తున్నాం. ఒక అంశం నేను చాలా స్పష్టంగా చెప్పదలుచుకున్న, ఈ రోజు ఏ ఒక్క సైంటిస్టు అన్సైంటిఫిక్ అంశాలు జరుగుతుంటే మాట్లాడలేని పరిస్థితుల్లో ఉన్నారు. మనందరికీ తెలుసు, కరోనా టైంలో మొత్తం ప్రజల ప్రాణాల్ని కాపాడింది డాక్టర్లు, హాస్పిటల్ నర్సులు, కాంపౌండర్లు, హాస్పిటల్లో పనిచేసే పారిశుధ్య కార్మికులు, లెటర్న్స్ క్లీన్ చేసే వాళ్ళందరూ కష్టపడి పనిచేసి ప్రజల ప్రాణాలు కాపాడితే, మరొక వైపు సైంటిస్టులు ల్యాబొరేటరీలో అనేక పరిశోధనలు చేసి ఏ వేరియంట్స్ వస్తున్నాయి కనిపెట్టి, అదేవిధంగా కొత్త అంశాలని కనుగొంటూ, వ్యాక్సిన్స్ కూడా కనుగొని, మందుల్ని కనుగొంటూ ప్రజల ప్రాణాలని కాపాడితే, దేశ పార్లమెంట్ నూతన భవనాన్ని ఇనాగ్రేట్ చేసేటప్పుడు అటు సైంటిస్టులని ఇటు డాక్టర్లని పిలిచి వాళ్ళతో చేయించాల్సి ఉండే, ఇంత ప్రపంచ స్థాయి విపత్తు నుండి ప్రపంచమంతా అల్లాడుతున్న తరుణంలో, ప్రజలందరూ భయాందోళనకు గురైన తరుణంలో మీరు భారతదేశ ప్రజల ప్రాణాలు కాపాడారుగా అని వాళ్ళని గౌరవించాల్సింది పోయి మన ప్రధాని గారు, మన పాలకులు పోయి సన్యాసుల్ని వాళ్ళని పిలిచి వాళ్ళ కాళ్ళు మొక్కిన పరిస్థితి మనకు కనపడుతూ ఉంది. అంటే ఈ ప్రియారిటీ ఎటు ఉంది అనేది అర్థమవుతుంది. సో వాటన్నిటిని భార్గవ గారు నిరంతరం ఖండించడమే కాదు, ఇండియన్ సైన్స్ కాంగ్రెస్ ని అలాంటి వాటిని ఖండించడమే కాదు, ఇండియన్ సైన్స్ కాంగ్రెస్ ని సూడో సైన్స్ కాంగ్రెస్ గా మారుస్తున్నారని, వెంకటరామన్ రామకృష్ణన్ లాంటి నోబెల్ లారెట్ అది ఇండియన్ సైన్స్ కాంగ్రెస్ కాదు, సర్కస్ కంపెనీ లాగా మార్చారు అని చెప్పినప్పుడు, అనేక అన్సైంటిఫిక్ అంశాలు వచ్చినప్పుడు ఏ సైంటిస్టు మాట్లాడని పరిస్థితుల్లో, మన పార్లమెంట్ అప్పుడు వేరే వాళ్ళని పిలిస్తే ఎవరు మాట్లాడలేదు. ఇండియన్ సైన్స్ కాంగ్రెస్ ని అన్సైంటిఫిక్ అంశాల మీద సెమినార్ జరిపి దాన్ని అన్సైంటిఫిక్ గా మారుస్తున్నప్పుడు ఎవరు మాట్లాడని పరిస్థితుల్లో, వీల్ చైర్ మీద ఉండి కదల్లేని పరిస్థితుల్లో ఉన్న భార్గవ గారు ప్రెస్ మీట్ నిర్వహించి దాదాపు 2 గంటల పాటు, నాకు తెలుసు చందన గారు అప్పుడు నన్ను కోపడ్డ విషయం కూడా, భార్గవని ఇంకా మీరు ఎంత ఇబ్బంది పెడతారు, ఆయన అంతసేపు కూర్చోగలుగుతాడా అంటే, ఆయన ఎంత ఓపికగా కూర్చొని ప్రతి ప్రెస్ వాళ్ళు ఎవరు అడిగినా ప్రతి ప్రశ్నకి సమాధానం చెప్తూ దాన్ని ఖండిస్తూ, సైంటిస్టులందరూ ఎంత సైంటిఫిక్ గా ఉండాలి, మనం ఏ విధంగా ప్రభుత్వము పదవుల కోసమో ప్రమోషన్ల కోసమో లేకపోతే ఇంకో దానికోసమో మనం రాజీ పడకూడదు, ఖచ్చితంగా మనం భారతదేశం ప్రపంచ స్థాయి సైన్స్ అండ్ టెక్నాలజీలో ప్రపంచ స్థాయిలో నిలబడాలి, స్వావలంబన సాధించాలంటే ముఖ్యంగా సైంటిస్టులు తలెత్తుకొని నిలబడి ఎదురు తిరిగి ప్రశ్నించగలగాలి అని నిరూపించిన వ్యక్తి డాక్టర్ పిఎం భార్గవ గారి. భార్గవ గారికి మనం విజ్ఞాన దర్శిని తరఫున జోహార్లు అర్పిస్తూ ఈ సెమినార్ ని ముందుకు కొనసాగించవలసిందిగా నెక్స్ట్ మన డాక్టర్ చందన చక్రవర్తి గారు ఇంకా వారు మాట్లాడితే మనకు అర్థం అవుతుంది. సో ప్రతిభ గారు.
థ్యాంక్ యూ రమేష్ గారు, ఎంతో గొప్ప విషయాలు చెప్పారు నిజంగా పిఎం భార్గవ గారి గురించి. బిఎం భార్గవ గారు కేవలం ఒక సైంటిస్ట్ గా కాకుండా ఒక సామాజికవేత్తగా, నిజంగా ఒక సోషల్ రిఫార్మర్ గా, సమాజానికి ఉపయోగపడే పనులు చేయాలనే ఒక ఉద్దేశంతో చాలా గొప్ప పనులు చేశారు. అలాగే సేమ్ టైం మన హైదరాబాద్ కి ఒక గుర్తింపు అంతర్జాతీయంగా తీసుకోవడానికి కూడా మన సిసిఎంబిని స్టార్ట్ చేయడం అనేది చాలా గొప్ప విషయము. పైగా మీరు అన్నట్టు ఇప్పుడు సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ గురించి లేదండి. అంటే కోవిడ్ అప్పుడు అవసరానికి సైంటిస్ట్ ఎంత కష్టపడ్డారు, ఎంత చేశారు అనేది కాకుండా ఇప్పుడు ప్రజలు చాలా వరకు మళ్ళీ అన్సైంటిఫిక్ థింకింగే, అంటే మళ్ళీ మూఢనమ్మకాల్లోకి, మళ్ళీ ఒక భ్రమలలోకి, ఒక ద్వేషపూరితమైన సమాజం తయారవుతుంది అనేది కూడా మనకు చాలా బాధాకరమైన విషయం. సో ఇలాంటివి కాకుండా ప్రజల్ని సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ లోకి, సైన్స్ పరంగా ఆలోచించేలాగా మనం ముందుకు తీసుకెళ్లాల్సిన బాధ్యత ప్రతి ఒక్కరిది అనేది మీరు మళ్ళీ ఒకసారి గుర్తు చేశారు. ఇప్పుడు నేను మన కీనోట్ స్పీకర్ డాక్టర్ చందన చక్రవర్తి గారిని ఈ సందర్భాన్ని ఉద్దేశించి మాట్లాడవలసిందిగా కోరుతున్నాను. గుడ్ ఈవినింగ్ మేడం, ప్లీజ్ క్యారీ ఆన్.
Good evening. Thank you, Prathibha. Thank you, Ramesh. And before I begin this talk, may I congratulate you, Prathibha.
మేడం ఒక్క నిమిషం, మిగతా వాళ్ళందరూ లైవ్ లో ఉన్న వాళ్ళు ఆ విధంగానే ఉండండి. మళ్ళీ చివర్లో మీ సందేహాలు, వాటికి సమాధానాలు అవి కూడా ఇవ్వడం జరుగుతుంది. సో అందరు లైవ్ లో ఉండండి. మేడం కంటిన్యూ.
So friends, I'm honored to be here today to give you a glimpse of Dr. Bhargava's extraordinary and exemplary life. You've heard from Ramesh, a part of his life story. Today is his sixth death anniversary. On 1st August 2017, Dr. Bhargava departed when he was just a few months short of turning 90. Those of us who have known him and had the opportunity to meet him or interact with him or work with him know how much one could learn from him. I had the single most good fortune to have journeyed with him for 35 years, having a ringside view of all that he was engaged with and learning from him. Today, I will give you a glimpse of his work in promoting scientific temper. Friends, all of you know that Indian scientists are, by and large, known to lead dual lives: a life in the lab that demands a rigorous scientific attitude, questioning, and critical analysis, and a diametrically opposite one in their private sphere, where they would have no compunction in throwing the same scientific attitude to the four winds, and to lead lives that are no different from obscurantists. It is therefore little surprise to see a majority of so-called scientists openly engaging in the most ridiculous beliefs and superstitions. It is for this reason Indian science has not been able to boast of too many rationalists, atheists, or humanists. In this scenario, one Indian scientist who stood out as a torchbearer for rationalism, atheism, and humanism, owing to his relentless fight against irrationality and consistent public stand against obscurantism, was Dr. Pushpa Mitra Bhargava, who people who are very close to called him PMB fondly. Dr. Bhargava was a visionary, as you just heard, a scientist par excellence, a writer, institution builder, administrator, a strong proponent of scientific temper, a great patron and supporter of all forms of art, a proactive citizen who took his duties as a citizen seriously, and above all, a fearless man. He loved calling a spade, even when he was a government servant, and he didn't care for consequences. Dr. Bhargav, as most of you know, is widely regarded as the architect of modern biology and biotechnology in India. He conceived, built, and directed for 13 years the prestigious Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, CCMB. A reference to it was made by the two speakers before me. This is in Hyderabad and often referred to as the jewel in the crown of Indian science. All of you have heard about DNA fingerprinting being the only way to establish identity of a person. This DNA fingerprinting, the Indian technique, was invented in this laboratory. They've done a lot more fantastic work in molecular biology, but I will not go into that today. Just a few words about the CCMB. It was the first laboratory to be set up in India in 1977 that was totally devoted to modern biology with emphasis on basic research. It is recognized as one of the best laboratories of its kind anywhere, and it's a member of the UNESCO's network of institutes of the highest level of excellence and cellular and molecular biology. Dr. Bhargava was not only known for his scientific contribution, but also for his tireless efforts to promote scientific temper, humanism, free thought, and rationalism in Indian society. He truly believed that science and reason were the best tools for understanding the world and solving its problems. He strongly advocated the scientific method, critical thinking, evidence-based decision-making. He emphasized the importance of questioning assumptions, challenging dogma, and seeking truth through experimentation and observation. He also believed that sociology was equally important to understand humans, communities, and how societies work and thrive, something that very few scientists understand. It's not enough for you to just understand science. Sociology was just as important, to be a human being who's well-rounded. In addition to his scientific work, Dr. Bhargava was a vocal advocate for human rights and social justice. As you know, he spoke out against superstition, against blind faith, and irrational beliefs that hindered progress and perpetuated inequality. He believed that science should be used to improve people's lives and advocated for the responsible use of scientific knowledge and technology. We all know how terribly technology can be used to the detriment of mankind, and therefore, um, the responsibility of scientists is paramount. Dr. Bhargav was also a champion of free speech and intellectual freedom, something that is fast disappearing today. He believed that people should be free to express their ideas and opinions, even if they were unpopular or controversial. He encouraged open and honest dialogue and believed that differences of opinion should be resolved through rational debate and discussion. It's very important for us to remind ourselves of these things today in the present scenario. Dr. Bhargav brought modern biology to India in the mid 1950s when Indian scientists knew only classical biology. He got his PhD in chemistry at the age of 21. He had no formal training in biology, but came to be known as the father of modern biology in India. Not many Indian scientists who would have had the privilege of interacting with over 60 Nobel laureates, and more than half of them visited CCMB in Hyderabad. And a large number of them were close friends from much before they had got their Nobel. Friends, what made CCMB unique and different from other research institutes was its culture and the way it was organized. Nobody believed that an institute like CCMB was even possible. I used to go around with Dr. Bhargav with his, visitors who came, very highly placed visitors from all over the world and India to look around. And Dr. Bhargav, while CCMB was being built, would take them around explaining what he had in mind. And nobody believed at that time that a place like CCMB would have been possible. There was no foundation stone to bring up that institute. There was only dedication. And Dr. Bhargav told us all that, look, we will move into the new building, work there for one whole year, complete everything, show that it's a working laboratory, and we will do the best work. And only then this laboratory will be dedicated to the nation. And that's what he did on the 27th of November, 1986. The then Prime Minister, Rajiv Gandhi, had come to dedicate the laboratory to the nation. And they were all flabbergasted by what they had seen. They couldn't believe that it was India. It's one of the best equipped labs in the world, perhaps difficult to find in most places. Just imagine a lab in India working round the clock. CCMB has never been shut for a single day. No locks. Neither does the institute sleep. The main laboratory and all the services, including the receptions of the main building and the guest house, function 24/7. Well, there are other unique institutions he built, but we require another session to speak about them. Today, I will give you only a glimpse of Dr. Bhargava as a crusader of scientific temper. Now, friends, you all know that lack of scientific temper has been a bane of Indian society. It pervades all sections and classes, besieging every human activity. From attempting to attract luck and stability by changing the directions of furniture, doors, windows, gates, or by bringing down walls and raising or lowering floors in the name of Vastu, to space scientists seeking divine blessings on a replica of the satellite before its launch, or thousands of asthma patients flocking to Hyderabad on the 8th of June every year to swallow the divine fish medicine, or finding auspicious dates for marriages, housewarming, or announcing a new state capital, and avoiding the inauspicious hour for any undertaking. Scientific temper gets butchered in a million ways. Perhaps only the poorest of the poor who believe their entire lives, who actually spend their entire lives on pavements, exposed to the vagaries of scorching heat, biting cold, or pouring clouds, have neither illusions of a protective God nor belief in superstition. In fact, the higher one goes up the ladder of affluence, the degree of irrationality and belief increases. We all know Jawaharlal Nehru coined the term scientific temper in his book Discovery of India in 1946. He was the first of our leading politicians to recognize the role of scientific temper in the development and progress of the country. He laid bare the conflict between science and religious dogma, the essential and distinguishing part of every religion which has no rationale. Nehru became the first president of the Association of Scientific Workers of India, a trade union of scientists um, with at least a BSc degree or equivalent. This ASWI was founded in the late 1940s. One of the main objectives of this association was to build up scientific temper. Dr. Bhargava was on the first executive committee of the association. This association started out well, but soon declined into virtual non-existence. Chenna Reddy, a young minister then, who later became the chief minister of undivided Andhra Pradesh, was one of its earliest members. As Chenna Reddy rose in power and position, he succumbed to superstition. Such was his insecurity about retaining power that he carried a lucky wand recommended by a godman to ward off the evil eye. Now, ASWI's decline was rapid, and by 1963, its resurrection was near impossible. Dr. Bhargava, with Satish Dhawan, the distinguished space scientist who later became chairman of Indian Space Research Organization, and Abdur Rahman, a well-known historian of science, then decided to set up the Society for Promotion of Scientific Temper. They were convinced that a national society exclusively for promotion of scientific temper was a dire need. They published in Seminar, a well-known journal, a statement on scientific temper. They expounded the term and its importance. Now, membership of the society was ₹5 per annum, and it was open to any person above the age of 18 who was willing to sign a declaration that he or she subscribed to the basic premise that read, I believe that knowledge can be acquired only through human endeavor and not through revelation, and that all problems must be faced in terms of man's moral and intellectual resources without invoking supernatural powers. The society was launched at the occasion of an international symposium on nucleic acids held in Regional Research Laboratory, Hyderabad, which is now called Indian Institute of Chemical Technology, in January 1964, in the presence of leading molecular biologists from across the world, including Francis Crick, eminent leaders of the communist movement in India, Mohit Sen and Makhdoom Mohiuddin, were also present at the launch of the society. But the simple condition of having to sign a rational statement, I just told you what that statement was, in order to become a member of the society, was turning out to be a nightmare. To the horror of everyone who attended the launch of the society, scientist after scientist across the country refused to sign the declaration. By definition, scientific temper denies that any agency outside the purview of a scientific explanation can have any role in solving any problem, individual or collective. Why on earth would any scientist hesitate to commit to a declaration that merely reflected the basic spirit of scientific temper? A seemingly innocuous requirement was becoming the nemesis of the fledgling society. There were hardly any takers in the scientific community for this basic premise. To their great chagrin, the utter lack of scientific temper in the scientific community of our country was only beginning to unfold. A similar situation in any scientifically and technologically advanced country of the world was unthinkable. The Society for the Promotion of Scientific Temper died before it could take off. The chapter closed, bringing to void Dr. Bhargava's early attempt at promoting scientific temper in the country. But it taught him many lessons. Firstly, it was wrong to expect a natural commitment to scientific temper from a scientist in India. Secondly, commitment to scientific temper was just as important for scientific and technological advancement as it is for social and economic progress of our country. Therefore, Lack of scientific temper affected the quality of science in the country as much as it created innumerable ills in society. But this early disillusionment by no means dampened Dr. Bhargava's spirit. It would only strengthen his steely resolve to crusade against irrationality. If it were not for almost a maniacal crusader in him, he would hardly have withstood the serious turmoil that was to appear like a litmus test to take stock of his courage and conviction at each of his attempts to instill scientific temper. Dr. Bhargava was not one to give up. He took every opportunity to emphasize the need for inculcating scientific temper. By the 1970s, he became a well-known champion of scientific temper, writing incisively and speaking extensively across the country. His commitment to rationality and the clarity with which he articulated the attributes of knowledge gained through the method of science was evident in all his writings and speeches. Now, in the late 1970s, Dr. Bhargava set up a famous exhibition on the method of science in Delhi, which actually shook the establishment and threatened those in power. He wrote, directed, created, and mounted the Method of Science exhibition, closely involving a team of scientists, artists, and social activists. It was a multimedia, interactive exhibition that explained the 4 steps of the method of science: question, hypothesis, experiment, answer. Questioning is the most important requirement in science. As expected, the exhibition laid out rationality in a way that people could relate to them. It talked about godmen and their mumbo jumbo. It laid bare irrational practices like homeopathy and astrology. It goaded people to ask questions. It showed how science, and through questioning all the advances humankind has made, it taught people what magic was and how miracles did not exist. That supernatural forces do not exist, that everything around us can be explained through the laws of nature. There are things for which we don't have answers today, but we will have in future through asking the right questions and through science. But because we don't have answers today, we don't have to accept irrational explanations by people who claim to be closer to God. Now, the overall objective of the exhibition was to show how useful and important it is to make method of science an important and integral part of one's thinking and living, and how to employ this method to solve routine problems. Now, this exhibition showed a few things very clearly: that science does not claim to provide immediate answers to every question that may be asked at any given time, that science is not dogmatic or unreasonably insistent, that science does not seek an explanation of the unknown in terms of another unknown, that scientific observations are verifiable and repeatable, that science is forward-looking, science possesses no articles of faith, has no prejudices, and is not orthodox or conservative, and that science is truly international. And finally, the obligations if one accepted the method of science. It also said that science often progresses by disproving. The importance of the right to question was repeated over and over again. And finally, science progresses because people exercise their right to question. And of course, there are no secrets in science. This exhibition was supposed to be inaugurated, but there was a change in the government. Janata Dal came to power, and the exhibition was vandalized overnight, stolen, and dumped in a godown. They did not want it to be shown anywhere. After all, the method of science is all about questioning, and no autocratic government wants people to be told that it is their right to question. The then government feared that the opening of the exhibition could lead to a snowballing effect. Now, not one to give up easily, Dr. Bhargava bravely fought a prolonged legal battle against the government for justice, and then began rebuilding the exhibition all over again. The exhibition was brought to Hyderabad. It was put up at the State Central Library in Afzalganj for 4 years. There were 40 volunteers who were taken and shown the exhibition. These volunteers then took school children and teachers around. And two very well-known contemporary artists from Hyderabad, Surya Prakash and Lakshma Gaur, were very much a part of designing this exhibition. This exhibition was filmed and serialized in several periodicals. It has been estimated that this exhibition influenced a very, very large number of people, perhaps over 1 million people in the country. But this exhibition was finally given its burial surreptitiously in another well-known institute in Hyderabad. But that's another tale of intrigue, and it will not be narrated here. We need another session for it. While building a laboratory, he set up the Method of Science exhibition in Delhi. Now, we all know, and this apart from the fact that he was doing his own research work, from where he got his energy, from where he got his time, none of us could ever make out. But he had the passion and he did it. Not only was he doing all of this, when all this work was going on, Dr. Bhargava was also writing an integrated national science textbook for children, which set up a whole new style of writing science textbooks. It was integrated. It was not divided into, physics, chemistry, biology, etc. He also became one of the key architects of the widely known Statement of Scientific Temper, issued jointly by a group of liberal, committed, and rational, very, very high achievers of the country. This statement was issued several decades ago, about 4 decades ago, close to 4 decades ago. It has been debated and discussed in several fora, and it continues to be referred to in writings and speeches even today. Needless to say that Dr. Bhargava was a humanist to the core. When asked what his religion was, he said, humanism. He often asked people, would they stop to ask the religion of a drowning child before saving the child? He said, altruism is built in our genes, but we spoil that with our adherence to identities of caste, creed, language, religion, color, and race. As an atheist, he never missed an opportunity to write or speak to make the point that atheism is the natural outcome of being a rational human being. He attended every atheist meeting in the remotest parts of the country just to show his solidarity. On science versus religion, Dr. Bhargava never minced words. He would say, science is pursuit of truth, religion is service in adulation of God. Science denies existence of supernatural, religion is based on supernatural. Science has no high priests, religion has only high priests who cannot be questioned. Questioning is the basis in science. Religion does not allow questioning. Science is accessible to all and applies to all. In religion, you need middlemen, touts, and clergy. In science, discoveries are made by following the method of science. Religion, on the other hand, is based on revelation. Science has a built-in corrective. Religion, once written, goes on forever. Everything is accepted on faith. Science is verifiable and repeatable, but religion is unverifiable. Science allows testable predictions. Religion has untestable predictions, and most, if not all, wrong. Science is forward-looking, while religion is backward-looking. Science is international, while religion is parochial. Science unites, religion divides, and we are seeing that today. Science leads to self-reliance, while religion leads to fatalism. Science demands integrity. Religion teaches you bribery. You just have to see what happens in temples. Science helps you conquer fears. Religion instills fears. Science has no discrimination. Religion has only discrimination. Ramesh had made a reference to Article 51AH. Dr. Bhargava played an important role in having scientific temper incorporated as a duty of the citizens of our country in the 42nd Constitutional Amendment in 1976. In his crusade against superstition, he did not spare well-known and powerful godmen, be it Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and his claim of levitation, that he could lift himself up without any prop and float in the air, or Satya Sai Baba and his third-rate magic. Neither did he spare people occupying the highest positions in the country who openly paid obeisance to charlatans. Friends, you've seen so much happening in the name of cow slaughter. How many people have been lynched in the name of cow slaughter? Now, in 1966, there was a mass agitation by RSS. There was sadhus storming Parliament in Delhi, the Parliament House in Delhi. They were walking on the streets with trishuls. This mass agitation was against cow slaughter. There was a frenzied mob on rampage. There was a 48-hour curfew around Parliament House. At that time, in Hyderabad, Dr. Bhargava called for a meeting in RRL, which is now IICT. At that meeting, to discuss cow slaughter. In that meeting, Dr. P. Ramachandra Rao, very well-known physician, was also invited. And he said, if we don't eat cows, cows will eat us. And that came out in the newspapers the next morning. But it came in, as quoted by, it quoted Dr. Bhargava. It came in his name. Now, Dr. Bhargava started getting verbal threats, and they were, from all kinds of people. There were questions in the parliament, questions all over why his services should not be terminated. There was a high power committee that was set up, and Justice Sarkar was heading the committee as a former Chief Justice of India. And the other members of that committee were Golwalkar, head of RSS, as you all know, then Shankaracharya of Puri, and Varghese Kurian. Now, Dr. Bhargava was called to Delhi to hear end of this. So the committee asked him that, what do you think about cow slaughter? Dr. Bhargava decided to give them a crash course in biochemistry. And he told them that, do you have no problem in drinking milk? They said, no, there's no problem in drinking milk, but what about flesh of the cow? So he says, it is the same biochemical process through which milk is made and through which flesh of the cow is made. So if you have no problems drinking milk, why should you have a problem drinking meat? Eating meat. And so they were really very angry, and they said, "What do you mean?" So Dr. Bhargava then again gave them a whole crash course, as I said, on biochemistry, and said what happens when you eat food, how it breaks down into smaller parts, and then how it breaks down in protein and to amino acids, and how it's absorbed by your various organs, and how flesh is formed, your muscles are formed, all your secretions are formed, and how milk is formed. Anyway, he left the meeting. Before leaving the meeting, after he had spoken about this, Golwalkar got very, very upset, and he was raging. So Shankaracharya of Puri told Golwalkar that, why are you so angry? Please, you are, spoiling our cause. Please calm down. Anyway, to cut a long story short, as Dr. Bhargava was leaving, Justice Sarkar left a message for him that please meet me in my room. And Justice Sarkar told him, you did extremely well today at this committee. Thank you very much. The other person who did very well at this, facing this committee was a Sanskrit scholar who had come, a professor of Sanskrit who had come from Varanasi. And he quoted from the Vedas how cow meat was regularly eaten in ancient India. So This cow slaughter thing is not something new. It has been going on, and we know the politics of it. When Dr. Bhargava met Varghese Kurian many, many years later, Varghese Kurian is the same gentleman who set up Anand, the milk cooperative in Gujarat, Amul. So Mr. Kurian told him, they was recollecting the 1964 meeting in Delhi, and his biography actually quotes this entire incident that I'm talking about. So that was as far as cow slaughter went. I'll tell you a little about what happened with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. In 1977 in Hyderabad, Dr. Bhargava had a direct encounter with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. As I told you, he was the originator of the technique of transcendental meditation. He called it TM. He propagated that if 1% of the world practiced TM, it would transform the world as all human problems would disappear. A process that he and his followers called the Maharishi effect. It also famously claimed that he had initiated some 3,000 people into the art of flying, and they had become flying yogis. Now, Mahesh Yogi knew how important it was to woo scientists in order to gain credibility from the rigor of science. Among his ardent admirers who endorsed his claim was an eminent physicist, E.C.G. Sudarshan, who was the first one to propose the existence of tachyons. In fact, E.C.G. Sudarshan's name was proposed for the Physics Nobel Prize on more than one occasion. So E.C.G. Sudarshan was an ardent follower, and he was at this meeting. Dr. Bhargava was invited to speak. He accepted the invitation, but he made it abundantly clear that he would speak as a skeptic, and said that you should not regret your decision. You're calling me, and I will speak my mind. And then, of course, he went up and he spoke diametrically opposite mind of his, which is both loud and clear. Despite it being very difficult to find even 10 people in the audience of thousands who would support his view. Mahesh Yogi was livid, and there was pandemonium among the organizers. Then a very strong defense they tried to, put up, but of course the damage was already done. After that, Dr. Bhargava was invited to have lunch with Mahesh Yogi. Somebody unknown to him, a stranger, came to Dr. Bhargava and whispered in his ear, "Sir, are you sure you want to have lunch? Don't go. You can't believe these people. Just go home. Don't have lunch with these people. You don't know what tricks they can resort to." Then, of course, he wrote a lot about Satya Sai Baba. And when Satya Sai Baba died in April 2011, the media made it appear as if the nation was mourning an irreparable loss. Dr. Bhargava's article published in the Hindu coldly demolished one by one the edifice on which Satya Sai Baba's divine stature rested. He reasoned that the phenomenon of reincarnation or birth was scientifically untenable, and such claims the world over were found to be fake when investigated. And he wrote, and I must quote this, he wrote that the national tragedy was his being given a state funeral, a state of official mourning being declared, and the country's political leaders cutting across parties, including the Prime Minister, the then Prime Minister, and the chairman of the National Advisory Committee, spending precious time and resources to have his last darshan, relegating to the background the nation's constitutional commitment to scientific temper. Now, given the mood of the disciples and the media's implicit support, it was indeed a brave act to criticize the God-man openly without mincing words. The article, as expected, invited the wrath of blind supporters who had willingly suspended their rational faculties. Dr. Bhargava's email was choking with hundreds of vituperative and abusive letters. But of course, surprisingly, over 40% of them were extremely supportive. Anyway, Sai Baba's fire had not even cooled, and currency worth millions, unaccounted gold, silver, diamonds, jewelry, and watches were tumbling out of his personal chambers. Let me now tell you a little about homeopathy. Dr. Bhargav never let an opportunity to go by to cite homeopathy as an example of extreme irrationality. He always maintained that if homeopathy was right, all of science had to be wrong. On 5th July 2003, Dr. Bhargava was invited to speak at a meeting organized by the Federation of Atheist and Rationalist Association. Dr. Bhargav demanded de-recognition of homeopathy as a medical system and ending of the government aid to it. He said that government had no business spending taxpayers' money on irrational practices such as homeopathy. In a democracy, people have a right to pursue their beliefs, including going to homeopaths or witch doctors. But how could the government endorse anything that is unscientific, especially since its constitution commits it to scientific temper? You know what happened the next day? A mob of 200 homeopaths descended on our office in Tarnaka and vandalized it. Whoever said homeopathy is soft medicine. Let me now tell you a little about astrology. He wrote a lot and spoke extensively at various platforms against astrology, presenting every conceivable argument to explain why astrology is unadulterated nonsense, completely unscientific. However, in 2001, BJP-led NDA government asked the UGC to encourage courses in our universities on Jyotir Vigyan, which would lead to a BSc MSc degree. And many inducements were dangled to entice universities to take the offer, and some universities took the offer. Dr. Bhargav and I filed a writ petition in Andhra Pradesh High Court against UGC, declaring their action as illegal and unconstitutional. Our affidavit stated that astrology had never been regarded and could never be regarded as a science. It had never been supported by any scientific research or study, and that it did not serve any national purpose. Under Article 51A of the Constitution, one of the fundamental duties of our citizens was to develop scientific temper. Our affidavit said that the action of the UGC, far from creating scientific temper, would strengthen superstition, which went against the line of scientific temper. The taxpayers' money should not be used for such purposes, our petition argued. The SC dismissed the judgment that the opinion of experts. Well, let me first tell you, the Andhra Pradesh High Court did not even admit it. They used the first or second edition of Encyclopedia Britannica, which was published in the 19th century, to say that we don't know whether, astrology is irrational. It's actually a science. But then on internet, in 2004, when this was being argued, you already had, the latest Encyclopedia Britannica available, and the 15th edition, which was published a long time ago, decades ago, had already said that astrology is nothing but mumbo jumbo. So we went to the Supreme Court. Now, in Supreme Court, to cut a long story short, the plea was dismissed with the judges saying that that the opinion of experts would differ and also change from time to time, and as the court was ill-equipped as regards with such matters, it adopted the doctrine of self-restraint and left such matters at the hands of expert committee of UGC. Now, why they did that was, at that time they were expecting the NDA government to come back to power, and nobody could take the risk of angering them. So our petition was thrown out. But Dr. Bhargav didn't stop there. A meeting of astrologers was held in Hyderabad. An open debate with astrologers and scientists was called. But the organizers were very careful to scientists who clearly believed in it, so that at the meeting they would have the of science. Now, Dr. Bhargava was not invited to this meeting, but some journalist friends telephoned and said, look, it's very important that you go to So Dr. Bhargava went there uninvited. Saw Dr. Bhargava at the meeting when the organizers had to ask to participate in the debate. Otherwise, it would have been obvious. Astrology into debates through arguments, but also through a challenge to all the astrologers. He had gone prepared with 4 horoscopes of individuals between the ages of 20 and 100. One of them was, of them were. People's lives are very challenging. Lives are very could be very prediction was right. He had not revealed the identity of these individuals. He said for every right prediction they made, he would pay them rupees 10,000. But for every wrong prediction the group of astrologers made, they would have to pay only rupees 1,000. He said he was willing to deposit the money with any referee that the committee would nominate. And he was by no means rich, but he was willing to give everything that he had. Believe me, there was not a single taker from that distinguished body of astrologers that had assembled there. You heard from Ramesh about fish medicine, that Dr. Bhargava himself used to stand in Nampally exhibition ground speaking to people, trying to convince them that this is hocus pocus. You need medicine, there are medicines available. How many scientists would do that? And scientists at his level, with his involvement in so many things, but he never ever missed that. Yet, he was absolutely uncompromising. Now, to give you an example of how uncompromising he was and his courage of conviction, let me give this example. He was elected to the three national science academies of the country, very, very, prestigious to be elected to these national science academies. Now, scientists usually clamor for such memberships. Dr. Bhargava chose to resign from all the academies when he realized that the academies showed little, these science academies, Indian National Science Academy, Indian Academy of Sciences, National Academy of Sciences, when these academies showed little concern for societal issues and had never ever taken an informed stand on any raging public issue, even against the utter lack of scientific temper among those holding responsible and highly visible positions. Who would do that? Then we all know that when all this intolerance, lynching, etc. began in 2014, Dr. Bhargava returned his Padma Bhushan. He said, what else can I do? This Padma Bhushan is kept with people, by people with pride. And I was very happy to receive it. But if the same government turns a blind eye to what's happening to this country, I do not want their award. So he returned the Padma Bhushan, writing a letter why he was due to the president of the country. Now, because of all of these stands that he had taken, he had become the most discussed scientist in parliament. Several times discussed why his services should not be stopped, why he should not be thrown out of the government, why he continued to be a government scientist, but he never bothered, he never stopped. He was also a great activist. Bhopal gas tragedy, when that happened, he was the first person, 1984 December, he immediately wrote to everyone across the world to get as much information about a time when there was no internet, information on the gas that had leaked. And he sent it to the Director General of CSIR, Dr. Varadarajan, who was called to Bhopal to oversee the deactivation of that gas. And then he became the chairman of one of the best and hard-working non-governmental organizations, Sambhavna Trust in Bhopal, that took care of the survivors of the gas tragedy by setting up a hospital. And this Sambhavna Trust has also undertaken a large number of scientific studies to understand what was happening to the survivors, to people who were exposed to the gas, even through people who were born later through their parents, etc. And he was totally committed to this cause. Ramesh has already told you how he walked from Charminar to Nampally and led a march of a huge number of several thousands of people in the peak of summer to protest against the Iraq war. At that time, he was over 70. So, needless to say, because of all of his contribution, not just to science, I did not even talk to you about his scientific contribution, which was no less admirable. He got the France's highest civilian award, Légion d'honneur. Légion d'honneur was not just a recognition of his work in science, but a recognition of all the other areas of public interest that he contributed to. In this, I have not mentioned to you, his fight against release of genetically modified organisms into the environment without a thorough safety study. And by doing this, he made a lot of scientists angry, but it didn't matter to him. He was fighting for a public cause. There's a great inspiration. Friends, I know I've taken a long time and I don't want to continue anymore. There's lots of other aspects of Dr. Bhargava that one can spend time discussing about his contributions. But let me just end this by, he was a great inspiration to a lot of people who had met him, worked, interacted with him, or even, communicated with him through email. Dr. Bhargava was always at the one telephone away, or one email away for anyone who needed help. And he would do that if there was a cause, and if, the person needed or the cause needed support, no matter how busy he was. He was a man who believed in excellence, and he always told us, look, there are no shortcuts to success. And he used to keep saying that he learned it from following Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. His attention to detail was absolutely, legendary. We all know that, who worked in CCMB. Ramesh said every detail of CCMB, every brick that was put there, everything, every corner, he paid great attention to. And he knew it himself. Not just that, in fact, you will find very few directors of institutes who can talk in depth about work that every other individual group was doing scientific, that the group was doing in the laboratory. Dr. Bhargava knew about everyone's work, every single person. So, and with great depth, he could talk about their work. He also believed that, not just believed, but showed through examples that never worry about consequences. Do the right thing. If it needs to be done, don't worry about what's going to happen. Because if you start worrying about what's going to happen, you will end up never doing the right thing. Towards the end, he was a very worried man in his last days, because he had already seen 3 years since the change of government, 2014. The anti-intellectual climate in the country and the consolidation of anti-science, anti-secular, anti-democratic attitudes, that worried him a great deal. And he saying that democracy allows dissent, reasoned dissent, and there can be no science without dissent. Finally, there was one thing that he kept saying because of this whole attempt we see at, homogenizing everything in this country. He kept saying that an important biological maxim is that variety leads to evolution and homogeneity leads to extinction. One of India's greatest strengths is the variety it has in all areas, be it religion or climate or food or biodiversity or customs or dress. We need to preserve this variety, which the present dispensation wishes to destroy. Well, friends, thank you very much for giving me this time. And I'm sorry I took perhaps more time than was given to me. Let us remember that a person like Dr. Bhargava walked in our midst and showed through example what can be done even by every single individual. You don't have to depend on your chair, your authority that government or any other body gives you to do good. Each one of us can contribute in innumerable ways to our society. That's a lesson we can learn from his life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, madam. Thank you very much for taking us walk through the life of Dr. Bhargava Garu, who is not just a scientist, but who was a atheist, rationalist, humanist, and activist more than anything else, who always believed that science is not enough, but also sociology is also more important to live in a society and make people realize about science. So really, madam, you have showed us vast your all your 35 years of working with sir. So definitely it's we have known about a great inspiring person, and we hope we will see at least few more people like that, which is actually very difficult, but we'll try doing that, madam. So I'm sure most of them must have got very inspired from whatever you spoke about Dr. Bhargava Garu. And as a part of Vignana Darshini also, we always try to make people realize, reach people with to fight against unscientific things, particularly like Vastu or Godmans or homeopathy or the beliefs like what our space scientists do, taking a replica of the rocket and all. So anti-superstitious fight is going on behalf of Vignana Darshini, and we wish we'll take it more forward with inspiration from PM Bhargava and as well as and you also. Thank you very much, madam. Now I request anybody who have any doubts, who want to talk anything or ask anything, please you can unmute yourself and talk.
ఒక్క నిమిషం మిత్రులారా, ఫేస్బుక్ లైవ్ చూస్తున్న వాళ్ళు, మొదట్లో మీకు ఫేస్బుక్ లైవ్ లో కొంత ఆడియో సమస్య వచ్చిందని చెప్పారు. ఆ తర్వాత అది సార్ట్ అవుట్ అయింది. ఏదేమైనా తర్వాత ఈ వీడియో మొత్తము రికార్డ్ అయిందంతా కూడా మళ్ళీ నేను యూట్యూబ్లో అప్లోడ్ చేస్తాను, మళ్ళీ ఫేస్బుక్లో కూడా మళ్ళీ స్ట్రీమ్ చేసే ప్రయత్నం చేస్తాం. సో ఇది ఎక్కువ మందికి ఈ టాక్ వెళ్ళాల్సిన అవసరం ఉందనే ఉద్దేశంతో దీన్ని నిర్వహించడం జరిగింది. సో భార్గవ గారు ఇప్పటిదాకా మన చందన గారు చెప్పినట్టు ఆయన అన్ని రంగాల్లో, అటు యాక్టివిస్ట్గా, ఇటు సైంటిస్ట్గా, అటు రేషనలిస్ట్, హ్యూమనిస్ట్గా సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ పెంపొందించడంలో చాలా ప్రయత్నాలు చేశారు. ఒక్క విషయం ఏంటంటే, నేటి తరానికి తెలియాల్సిన విషయం ఏంటంటే, ఈరోజు సైంటిస్టులు అంటే మనం ఏదో కొంతమందిని చూస్తూ ఉన్నాం, అంటే చెంగలమ్మ గుళ్ళో ముహూర్తాలు పెట్టే వాళ్ళని చూస్తున్నాం. కానీ భారతదేశం స్వతంత్రం సాధించిన ఆ కొత్త నూతన దశలో మన పాలన మనం తీసుకొచ్చుకున్న తరుణంలో సైంటిస్ట్ కమ్యూనిటీ పెద్ద ఎత్తున దేశభక్తితో ఒకవైపు దేశం స్వాతంత్ర శాస్త్ర సాంకేతిక రంగంలో స్వావలంబన సాధించాలనే టైంలో వాళ్ళందరూ అంటే అసోసియేషన్ ఆఫ్ సైంటిఫిక్ వర్కర్స్ ఆఫ్ ఇండియా, అంటే మేము కూడా శ్రమజీవులం, సైన్స్ కోసం కష్టపడతా ఉన్నాం, శ్రమజీవులం అనే ఉద్దేశంతో ఆ అసోసియేషన్ ఆఫ్ సైంటిఫిక్ వర్కర్స్ ఆఫ్ ఇండియా అనే ఒక సంస్థను స్థాపించుకున్నారు. అందులో డాక్టర్ భార్గవది కూడా చాలా ప్రధానమైన స్థానం. అట్లాగే దానికి ప్రెసిడెంట్గా ఆనాటి ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ నెహ్రూ గారు ఉండేవారు. అంటే నెహ్రూ గారు వీళ్ళందరినీ నడిపిస్తూ ఆ విధంగా ముందుకు తీసుకెళ్లారు. ఈరోజు ఐఐటీలు కానీ, యూనివర్సిటీస్ కానీ, లేకపోతే సిఎస్ఐఆర్ ల్యాబ్స్ కానీ ఇవన్నీ ఉన్నాయి అంటే అది నెహ్రూ యొక్క దార్శనికత, ఆనాటి సైంటిఫిక్ కమ్యూనిటీ యొక్క దేశభక్తి, వాళ్ళ దేశం పట్ల వాళ్ళ నిబద్ధత కూడా దానికి కనపడుతుంది. సో అవన్నీ కూడా మనం తెలుసుకోవాల్సిన అంశాలు చాలా ఉన్నాయి. ఇంకా భార్గవ గారి జీవిత చరిత్రలో కూడా ఇంకా మనం చాలా అంశాలు తెలుసుకోవాలి. మళ్ళా కూడా మనం చందన గారితో ఇలాంటి చర్చలు కొనసాగుతాయి. ఎందుకంటే సైంటిస్టులందరినీ ఏకతాటి మీదకి తీసుకొచ్చి సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ గురించి సైంటిస్టులందరితో స్టేట్మెంట్ కూడా తయారు చేసి అందరితో అది రిలీజ్ చేయించారు డాక్టర్ పిఎం భార్గవ గారు. నేడు ఆ సైంటిస్టులో కూడా సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ పొరబడుతున్న తరుణంలో భార్గవ గారి గురించి మనం ఇంకా మాట్లాడుకోవాల్సి ఉంటుంది. సో ఓకే ఫ్రెండ్స్, ఇప్పుడు మన అధ్యక్షుల వారు చెప్పారు, అధ్యక్షుల వారు నిర్వహిస్తారు. మీరందరూ కూడా అంటే మైక్లు ఆన్ చేసి ఒక్కొక్కరు ప్రశ్నలు అడిగితే ఆన్సర్ చేయడానికి ప్రయత్నం చేస్తాం. ఒకవేళ మైక్ అంటే కొంతమంది లిజన్ ఓన్లీ మోడ్లో వచ్చారు, మైక్రోఫోన్ మోడ్లో వస్తేనే మీకు మీ మైక్ పనిచేస్తుంది, మాకు వినపడుతుంది. మాట్లాడేది మీకు వినపడుతుంది కానీ మీకు వినపడదు. సో లిజన్ ఓన్లీ మోడ్లో ఉన్న వాళ్ళు అక్కడ కింద ఒక బటన్, అది బాక్స్ ఉంది, అందులో మీ బాక్స్లో మీరు టైప్ చేయండి. మీరు ఏం అడగాలనుకున్నారో అది టైప్ చేస్తే మీ డౌట్ రేస్ చేస్తే మేము ఇక్కడ మీ తరఫున ప్రతిభ గారు కానీ నేను కానీ అడుగుతాం మీ క్వశ్చన్. సో అందుకని లిజన్ ఓన్లీ మోడ్లో జాయిన్ అయిన వాళ్ళు అక్కడ టైప్ చేయండి మీ క్వశ్చన్. మిగతా వాళ్ళు మైక్ ఉన్న వాళ్ళు, అన్మ్యూట్లో ఉన్న వాళ్ళు మైక్ ఆన్ చేసుకుని అడగండి. మీ వీడియో ఆన్ చేసుకున్నా కూడా ఏం అభ్యంతరం లేదు. ఇప్పుడు ఆన్ చేసుకోవచ్చు. ప్రతిభ గారు. చూడండి ఎవరు అడుగుతారా ప్రశ్న.
ఎవరైనా ఏదైనా అడగాలి అనుకుంటే అడగండి. చాట్ లో మెసేజ్ చేసా మేము చూస్తాం. You have really spoke very extensively, madam. So I don't think people have anything more to ask about also about PM Bhargava garu. You covered almost every aspect of his life, every angle of his life, like as a not just a scientist but also as an activist, socialist, atheist, rationalist, humanist who always believed that humans are the ultimate on this earth. So I doubt if anybody will have any questions to ask or anything to add to it.
Very tired after all this long talk.
Praveen వచ్చారు. ప్రవీణ్, డాక్టర్ ప్రవీణ్ కుమార్. ప్రవీణ్ మన ఇండియా తను వైజాగ్ చెందిన తను. బట్ ఇప్పుడు తను ఈటీహెచ్ యూనివర్సిటీ స్విట్జర్లాండ్, మన ఐన్స్టీన్ ఎక్కడైతే రీసెర్చ్ చేశాడో, సో ఎక్కడైతే ప్రొఫెసర్గా వర్క్ చేస్తారో అక్కడ తను అసిస్టెంట్ ప్రొఫెసర్గా వర్క్ చేస్తూ ఉన్నాడు ఈటీహెచ్ యూనివర్సిటీలో. సో ఎన్విరాన్మెంటల్ సైంటిస్ట్, ముఖ్యంగా ఎన్విరాన్మెంటల్ ఇష్యూస్, నేచర్ ఇష్యూస్ మీద తను రీసెర్చ్ చేస్తూ ఉన్నాడు. ఇటీవల మన ఇది పెద్ద ఎత్తున వరదలు కురిసిన దాని మీద కూడా తను వెంటనే ఒక పోస్ట్ పెట్టారు. సో ప్రవీణ్.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chandana Chakravarti, for your inspiring talk on Bhargava garu. Not a question, but more or less, I would like to hear from you, like regarding the science promotional activities or the scientific temperament. We often hear from many organizations, let's say like Ramesh Garu, Vignana, Darshini, and so on. But what is actually lacking is the voice of the scientists, as you mentioned. So what are the steps that we could take to address this issue? Or what is your opinion on this? Because so who is our next Bhargava? Who will ask important questions at this very important time. Well, we are all just growing in our academics and so on, so we are very young still. But as you mentioned, achievements that we hear from you with respect to Bhargava Garu are very inspiring. But my question is now, like, who is now replacing that, or how do we see that we grow this kind of attitude in our scientists to ask good questions? This is more or less a suggestion that I would like to hear from you, and maybe also to Dr. Prathibha Lakshmi and Ramesh Garu. So this is my concern, actually. Yeah.
Praveen, you are asking a very, very important question, a question that is actually worrying
మేడం
all
ఒక్క
of
నిమిషం
us.
ముందు ప్రవీణ్ బ్రీఫ్ గా తెలుగులో కూడా ఒకసారి చెప్తే మళ్ళీ మిగతా వాళ్ళకి.
ఎస్ సారీ అండి, ఇంగ్లీష్లో అడగాల్సి వచ్చింది. మేడం గారు ఇంగ్లీష్లో మాట్లాడారు కాబట్టి. సో నేను అడిగిన ప్రశ్న ఏంటంటే, ఇప్పుడు మనకి సైన్స్ ప్రమోషనల్ యాక్టివిటీస్ మనం చూస్తూ ఉంటాం మన 2 రాష్ట్రాల్లో. అయితే ఎక్కువగా మనకి సైన్స్ పాపులరైజర్స్ మనకు కనపడుతూ ఉంటారు, మనకి చెప్తా ఉంటారు, ఇది సైంటిఫిక్ వే ఆఫ్ లివింగ్, లేదా మీరు ప్రశ్నించండి, అన్నీ బిలీవ్ చేయకండి, నమ్మకండి, ప్రశ్నించాలని మనం చాలా వింటానే ఉంటాము. అయితే సైన్స్ ప్రమోషనల్ యాక్టివిటీ భాగంగా చాలా మంది సైన్స్ ఉత్సాహకులు, రమేష్ గారు లాంటి వాళ్ళు, మిగతా ఇక్కడ ఉన్న చాలా మంది ముందుకొచ్చి సైన్స్ గురించి మాట్లాడుతూ ఉంటారు. కానీ మన శాస్త్రవేత్తలు ఎందుకు మాట్లాడరు ముందుకొచ్చి? గవర్నమెంట్కి సంబంధించిన కొన్ని ఇష్యూస్ కానీ, లేకపోతే కొన్ని డిసగ్రిమెంట్స్ కానీ, సో సైంటిస్టులు మన దేశంలో భార్గవ గారు ప్రశ్నించినంతగా మనం ఇప్పుడు ప్రశ్నించలేకపోతున్నాం. ఈ ముఖ్యంగా ఇలాంటి సమయంలో ప్రశ్నించడం చాలా ముఖ్యమని మనందరికీ తెలుసు, ఇక్కడ ఉన్న వాళ్ళందరికీ. సో నేను మేడం గారిని అడిగిన ప్రశ్న ఏంటంటే, పిఎం భార్గవ గారి తర్వాత అంత స్థాయిలో విస్తృతంగా గవర్నమెంట్ని ప్రశ్నించే వాళ్ళు కానీ, లేకపోతే అలాంటి యాటిట్యూడ్ మన సైంటిస్ట్లో కానీ, లేకపోతే అదే మన శాస్త్రవేత్తలో కానీ పెంపొందించాలంటే ఏ రకమైన చర్యలు తీసుకోవాలి అని మేడం గారిని అడిగాను. దానికి మేడం గారు ఆన్సర్ చేస్తారు. అదేవిధంగా రమేష్ గారిని, ప్రతిభ గారిని కూడా అడిగాను.
Thank you, Praveen, for asking this very, very important, making this very important point. As you said, it's really not a question, but this is something that worries all of us. You are absolutely right that there is a big vacuum today. At one point, we had people like Vikram Sarabhai, Satish Dhawan, Bhatnagar, Professor Yashpal, Professor Obaid Siddiqui. There were Jayant Narlikar is still there, but point is, we had all these big names. We had all these people who would make statements from time to time, who would intervene if we went wrong, and they never bothered about what's going to happen. Of course, times are different then. One can say that. But please remember that we had emergency too in this country. And all these people were young scientists, government scientists working then. It didn't stop them. They were courageous. But for some reason, it is a big worry that we don't hear voices of scientists. We have now, by and large, with very, very small exceptions, scientists who've become career scientists. Just follow your career, make progress in your career, take your career forward, do whatever is required to take your career forward. Be it silence or be it the willingness to crawl even before you are asked to bend. Unfortunately, there is absolutely no leadership in science. And not just that, we have people who are very willing to become spokespeople of those who are doing wrong in this country. So that's the current situation. But, we should never become cynical, never lose hope, because remember, every night ends with the dawn. After every night, there is daybreak. So time will come, but of course we can't keep sitting down. We as individuals can do a lot. Supposing each of us just influence 10 people around us and make sure they influence another 10. I'm sure a lot of us have the ability to influence 100 people, a few hundreds of them. You are all trying to do that. Keep working at it, keep chipping at it. But then to the larger question, I think what is absolutely important for us to realize is, don't wait for a messiah to come. Don't wait for another Bhargava to pop up from somewhere. That's not going to happen. Don't have faith in older people who've achieved a status position in life to do something for you. They're not going to do. So people will have to emerge from us. And how does that happen? That happens from education. We have to catch people young. Forget about spending time on older people or converting them. That's not going to happen. You have to catch people young, and that has to start from schools. Please remember that the best of our stalwarts in this country, leaders, name them, from politics, from academics, from arts, from literature, most of them, in fact, virtually 99% of them came from our government institutions, government education institutions. That means we were doing something right. Our government schools were very good. It's just that we, middle class, higher middle class, and the rich, decided no. Our children can't go to government schools with poor children. We must set up private schools. So we stopped sending our children there. If we had not stopped that, we would have had a stake in those schools. We as parents, like we do in private schools and expensive schools, parents go, they demand, they keep track of what the school is doing. We do it in the schools that our children go. If we had done the same thing in government schools, then parents would have had a voice. You leave government schools to the poor who do not have a voice, who themselves are uneducated. What will happen to government schools? That's what we did. And so we were doing right. And because we did right in our education system, despite a lot of things that we did wrong, we have today doctors and scientists of the capacity that we have. That the fact that our peaks in science, peaks in science in any area is as good as anywhere else in the world. However, what is different is our peaks are very small in number. Our average is also not the average that should be of anywhere else in the world. Our peaks are very good. They are few in number, but our average is very poor, and our below average is a vast number. We need to raise that standard, and that standard is not going to come from anywhere else but from education. But if you have a policy where you say mathematics is not required after class 8, what are you going to produce? If you are going to do what we are trying to do to our national education policy, where is the hope? And mind you, people are who are doing all this will send their children abroad. They will send their children to the best institutions wherever they are. But the poor, the middle class, who have no choice, will have to remain here. So we need to speak up. We need to do this. We need to influence people around us to say what is happening is wrong. Our lives are over. We have lived our lives. But look what we are going to leave for our future generations. It's not an easy answer. It's not an easy thing to do. But we will only do something if we keep hope alive in our hearts and we don't turn cynical that everything is lost, nothing's going to happen. No. Whatever there is needs to go on, and we need to build on this. We will have to fight. Please remember, we were in a far more difficult situation when the British were here, but this country threw the British out. We'll have to remember that against all odds, our country did come out. And it is up to us. All of us will have to show our commitment and our responsibility as citizens. That is why I admire JVV. That is why I admire all the science workers, Vignana Darshini, because what you are trying to do outside a formal system, in whatever way you can, this is highly commendable. And this kind of activity has to increase.
Exactly, madam. Just like you said, the foundation should be from the schools. Science should not be taught just as a subject, just to clear the 10th or anything. And the foundations, IIT foundation and all, from just 8th class and all, not just dividing the students who wants to learn science. They don't need social. They don't need maths after a certain class. So that should not be there. And the education system should change definitely. And I take pride in saying this, that generally most of the doctors are not worried about the superstitions, not worried about anti-science that is going on in the society. But I always question even students who are doing medicine, who believe superstitions. There are so many doctors who believe unscientific things, who talk about astrology, who talk about godmen, who just talk about vastu, and who just tie black threads on their hands and legs to protect themselves from dishti and all. So మన వంతు బాధ్యతగా మనం ప్రతి ఒక్కరికి, మన చుట్టూ ఉన్న కొంతమందికైనా మనం అవగాహన కలిగించడానికి ప్రయత్నం చేస్తుండాలండి. వీలైనంత వరకు ప్రతి ఒక్కరూ ఆ బాధ్యత తీసుకుంటే డెఫినెట్ గా మార్పు అనేది సాధ్యం అవుతుంది. మేడం చెప్పినట్టు ఇంకొక భార్గవ గారు వస్తారని గాని, ఇంకొక ఎవరు వస్తారు కానీ ఎదురు చూడడం కాకుండా మన వంతు బాధ్యతగా ప్రతి ఒక్కరు కొంతమందికైనా అవగాహన కలిగిస్తూ పోతూ ఉంటే, మన పరిధిలో మనం కొంతవరకైనా, అంటే సైంటిస్ట్ మాత్రము సైన్స్ ప్రొపగేట్ చేస్తారని అనుకునేలాగా లేదండి ఇప్పుడున్న పరిస్థితి. సైంటిస్ట్ ఎంత మంది, దే డోంట్ నో వాట్ ఈస్ సైన్స్, జస్ట్ ఒక ప్రొఫెషన్ లాగా మాత్రమే దాన్ని చూస్తున్నారు. ఇప్పుడు డాక్టర్స్ ఉన్నారు, ప్రొఫెషన్ లాగా మాత్రమే చూస్తున్నారు. ఈ సమాజానికి భయపడి ఇప్పుడు అగెయిన్స్ట్ గా వెళ్ళాలి అని అంటే వేరే వాళ్ళు ఎట్లా వాళ్ళ మీద దాడి చేస్తారనే పరిస్థితులు ఉన్నాయి. కాబట్టి దానికి తెగింపుతోని దానికి వ్యతిరేకంగా మాట్లాడేంత ధైర్యం ఎవరు చేయరండి. అండ్ దట్ ఈస్ వాట్ మేడ్ Dr. Bhargava garu different. That is what I think. So we have to take inspiration from good things, and we have to try to be inspiration from for at least few others in our own limitations. ఒక సైన్స్ ని ఒక వే ఆఫ్ లివింగ్ లాగా చూడాలి, కానీ ఒక సోర్స్ ఆఫ్ ఇన్కమ్ లాగా కానీ, ఒక ప్రొఫెషన్ లాగా కానీ చూడడం మానేస్తే డెఫినెట్లీ we will be able to add a little to for the betterment of our society.
Well said. Absolutely.
ఇంకెవరన్నా మాట్లాడొచ్చు. నా వాయిస్ వినపడుతుందా? అంటే ఒక్క అంశము వాస్తవము, అంటే ఒక మనిషిని ఇంకో మనిషి రిప్లేస్ చేయడం అనేది ఎప్పుడు సాధ్యం కాదు, ఎవరి పద్ధతి వాళ్ళకు ఉంటుంది. కానీ చాలామంది సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ కోసం పనిచేయడానికి రావాలి. మాకైతే భార్గవ గారు తర్వాత సైంటిస్టులు ఎవరు కనపడలేదు. ఇప్పుడు మన దగ్గర సైన్స్ టీచర్స్ చాలా మంది ఉన్నారు. ఈరోజు మన మీటింగ్లో కూడా ఇక్కడ జాయిన్ అయిన వాళ్ళు ఉన్నారు. సో అందరూ ఇక్కడ నుండి భార్గవల్ని తయారు చేసే పనిలో ఉండాలి. సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్తో కూడిన సమాజాన్ని తయారు చేసే పనిలో మన టీచర్స్ ఉండాలి. అందుకనే వాళ్ళందరికీ అది విజ్ఞప్తి. సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ కనుక లేకపోతే ప్రజల్లో ఇంకా మనము ఆ సమాజం ఇంకా ప్రగతి మనం ఆలోచించలేము. మళ్ళా ఆదిమ కాలంలోకి మనం వెళ్ళిపోయే పరిస్థితి ఉంటుంది. కాబట్టి అది అవసరం. ప్రతి ఒక్కరూ భార్గవ లాగా వచ్చి ఫీల్డ్లో పనిచేయలేకపోవచ్చు. కనీసం వాళ్ళు ఉన్న ప్లేస్లో అన్న సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ని ప్రమోట్ చేయడానికి ప్రయత్నం చేయాలి. అది ఇప్పుడు సైంటిస్టులో లోపం ఉంది. మనం చేయాల్సిన పని ఏంటంటే ఎక్కువ మంది స్టూడెంట్స్లోకి, ఎక్కువ మంది యూత్లోకి తీసుకెళ్ళినప్పుడు కనీసం నూతన తరం, ఇప్పటి తరం 40-50 ఏళ్ళు వచ్చిన వాళ్ళ పని అయిపోయింది, కానీ నూతన తరం అన్నా సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్తో కూడిన ఒక భారతాన్ని నిర్మిస్తారని ఆశిస్తూ ఆ రకంగా పనిచేద్దాం. ఇక్కడ రామచంద్రం చేరియాల వారు ఒక మెసేజ్ పెట్టారు. We need literature about PM Bhargava garu in school booklets for school children, in small booklets for school children annaru. His contribution to different domains in different books written as incidents. So ante nijangane రావాలి. అయితే ముందు ఖచ్చితంగా చిన్న చిన్న బుక్లెట్స్ కూడా రావాల్సిన అవసరం ఉంది. ఏ రంగాల్లో ఎలా చేశారు అనేది వెరీ గుడ్, అది రావాలి. కానీ అదే సందర్భంలో ముందు రావాల్సిన ఒక పుస్తకం ఉంది, అది చంద్ర గారు ఎప్పుడు తీసుకొస్తారో చెప్తే. ఆమె మాత్రమే తీసుకురాగలిగిన ఒక బుక్ ఉంది, అది తనే తీసుకురావాలి, చందన చక్రవర్తి గారు. ఆ బుక్ అర్జెంటుగా వస్తే ఆ తర్వాత అవి చదివి మనందరం చిన్న చిన్న బుక్లెట్స్ తీసుకురావచ్చు. అయితే ఒక బుక్ తెలుగులో ఉంది, దేవుళ్ళు దయ్యాలు భూతాలు అనుకుంటా సంథింగ్ టైటిల్. చందన గారు అంతేనా? మీరు భార్గవ గారు కలిసి రాసింది.
Devils, Angels, Devils and Science. Right? Angels, Devil and Science. అది
సో దేవుళ్ళు దయ్యాలు సైన్స్ అని ఒక తెలుగు పుస్తకం ఇంగ్లీష్లో ఉంది, తెలుగులో ఉంది అది. సో అది కొంచెం పెద్ద పుస్తకమైనా మనం చదివితే సైంటిఫిక్ టెంపర్ గురించి, సైంటిస్ట్ డిక్లరేషన్ కానీ, మెథడ్ ఆఫ్ సైన్స్ మరి ఎగ్జిబిషన్ గురించి కానీ, ఇతర కాంట్రిబ్యూషన్స్ ఎక్కడెక్కడ భార్గవ గారు ఏమేమి చేశారు, దేశవ్యాప్తంగా సైంటిస్టులు కూడా ఏ రకంగా కృషి చేశారు, అదేవిధంగా సైన్స్ సంస్థలు, జన విజ్ఞాన విజ్ఞాన దర్శనం ఇలాంటి సంస్థలు చేసిన కృషి గురించి కూడా అక్కడ ఉంటుంది. సో దాన్ని ఒకసారి అందరూ చదవండి. ఆ తర్వాత చందన గారు కూడా కొంచెం మీ బుక్ త్వరలో రిలీజ్ చేస్తే బాగుంది అబౌట్ భార్గవ. సో నెక్స్ట్ ఇంకెవరైనా మీరు అక్కడ మెసేజ్ టైప్ చేయదలుచుకుంటే పైన పబ్లిక్ చాట్ అనే ఆప్షన్ ఉంటుంది, అందులో ఆ చాట్లో మీరు టైప్ చేయండి. లేదు ఇక్కడ లైవ్లో మైక్ ఆన్ చేసి ఆడియో ఆన్ చేసి కూడా అడగచ్చు. బిఎన్ రెడ్డి గారు ఉన్నారా? ప్రొఫెసర్ బిఎన్ రెడ్డి లో ఉంది మరి.
సార్ గుడ్ ఈవినింగ్ సార్స్ అండ్ మేడమ్స్.
మీ పేరు
మేడం నేను రామచంద్రన్ చేరియాలా సార్?
సార్ మీరు
రామచంద్రన్
అడిగింది. ఓకే ఓకే చెప్పండి.
అవును సార్. అయితే ఇప్పుడు మీరు చెప్పినట్టు మన దేవుళ్ళు దయ్యాలు మూఢనమ్మకాలనే బుక్ చదివిన తర్వాత నేను పిఎం భార్గవ గారి గురించి అంటే అక్కడ టర్న్ అయినా సార్ వైపు. ఆ తర్వాత గోగినేని గారి గ్రూప్ లో కానీ, మేడం గారి స్పీచ్ వరకు ఇప్పుడు వినడం సెకండ్ టైం నేను చందన చక్రవర్తి మేడం గారిది. లైఫ్ నుంచి ఐఎమ్ టేకింగ్ కంప్లీట్ ఇన్స్పిరేషన్. ఐఎమ్ ట్రయింగ్ ఆల్మోస్ట్ టు ఫాలో హిజ్ ఫుడ్ స్టెప్స్ అండ్ హీ ఈస్ ఎ గ్రేట్ inspiration, and in action speech is also a great inspiration today for me. So my question or my area of requirement is how to encounter the fake news or the pseudoscience that is being exhibited nowadays. The pseudoscience, sir.
Good question.
Pseudoscience.
Voice cut అయింది. Okay.
Yeah, good question.
Nowadays, a lot of pseudoscience is being constructed and thrown into the social media like a dustbin, and everybody is believing the same thing. So, what counter that we have to do as science creators?
The only way you can counter untruths or fake news is by projecting truth. That's your only weapon. Every time somebody throws up, and we know there is a fake industry, fake news industry, there is all kinds of, even unspeakable rubbish that is being sent through WhatsApp. That's really the fight today in our country. And this is being done very, all with a plan, very knowingly. So how else do you fight untruths or fake news? By projecting the truth. Every time it happens, you have to stand up and say, no, this is wrong. Remember, for fake news, one of the first organizations that came up was something called Alt News. Every time a fake news went up, Alt News would look at that news and say, let's find out if this is right. And when they found, and they had to act very quickly, and when they found it was wrong, they would immediately put their stamp on it, fake news, and then make that, reach that out to people. So, in a very similar way, we need to do that. Can you imagine what happened in Manipur? Has happened for a lot of reasons, but what triggered it was one fake video that went viral. saying that it happened now and it has happened to so-and-so community and it has happened at so-and-so place. Everything about it was wrong. What did it lead to? So I think that's extremely dangerous, but I don't see any other way of fighting falsities, of untruths, other than fighting it with truth and bringing it out in the open. A lot of people, unfortunately, today have taken the stance that I have nothing to do with this. I'm going to keep quiet. I'm not going to take any sides. I'm not going to bring trouble on me. And they remain silent. They remain silent by saying, we have nothing to do with politics. I'm not a political person. I don't like politics. What they do not realize is the choice to remain silent is also politics. It is their politics to remain silent, to not say anything, to take a safe place. No person, no one whatsoever living in this world is exempt from politics. Every breath of ours, every choice we make is a political decision. That's something people don't understand. In fact, you'll be surprised. I recently invited a scientist to speak somewhere, and I made it very clear what it's going to be, what this talk is going to be on, and it's on science. And while speaking, I was telling the person why it's important for us to take this to people. And I said, you are doing excellent science, and we want to show people that it is possible to do such good science in our country, which can stand, at the same level as anywhere internationally. And that is possible only because of the kind of education you received in our country. Without that education, it wouldn't have been possible. That means there's some things that we were doing right. Instead of keeping those right things, we are demolishing those right things. But you don't have to say anything about that. You just speak about the good science that you're doing. The immediate answer I got from the person was, I'm sorry, I don't want to come and talk about this. I don't want to be political about anything. I said, you're talking about your work. What politics? We are showcasing your work. You will speak about that. No, I am not. I don't have anything to do with politics. I'm staying out of politics. This scientist is in the 50th decade of the person's life, in his or her 50s, and the person takes that. So what do you say? You're scared of even talking about your work, and you do not understand that whatever you are doing is politics by itself. You cannot avoid politics. There's nothing wrong with it.
మల్లికార్జున మాట్లాడు.
సార్, అంటే ఇప్పుడు మన చుట్టుపక్కల తిరిగే ప్రతి ఒక్కరిలో ప్రశ్నించే తత్వం అంటే ప్రతి పెద్ద పెద్ద విషయాలని ప్రశ్నించే ఇది చేయమనట్లేదు. కానీ కళ్ళ ముందు జరిగే చిన్న తప్పులను కూడా ప్రశ్నించే ధైర్యం రావట్లేదు ఎవరికి కూడా. సో నేను గమనించిన వాటిలో నా చుట్టుపక్కలలో 99.9% ప్రజలు అలాగే ఉన్నారు. సో వాళ్ళకి ప్రశ్నించే తత్వం రావాలంటే మనం చేయవలసిన పనులు ఏంటి?
Ramesh, can you just translate that for me?
Yeah, he is telling, asking about there is
most of the people in our
nature of questioning.
Most of the people have lost the nature of questioning. So he wants you to tell how we can inculcate that quality in people, the quality of questioning about unscientific things or what is going wrong in the society. Even simple things which are happening around us also, most of the people are afraid of questioning. When there is no questioning, there is no place for scientific temper. So how can we inculcate that quality in people around us?
Actually, in the method of science, all of us know the first thing after observation is questioning is important. Without questioning, there is no science. So nowadays, the questioning nature is lacking. So what can we do?
You're absolutely right. We have deliberately put a cap on questioning And if you remember in this talk, I said science actually cannot progress without questioning. Questioning is the basis of progress of knowledge for humankind. Uh, as I said, that there's very little you can do among older people, but you have to start from with children. And this, the need, the protecting the right to question and teaching children that you must always question is something that begins in your homes, even before you start going to school. So teaching people that they must question everything, that there is a way of asking questions. Of course, you will not ask the question, why is A written like this or why B is written like that. There is but they are important. It's very important to ask questions, and there's a rule for asking questions, how you ask questions. That, I'm afraid, must begin at home, and it must begin right from your kindergarten in school and must go right up uh, through your education. But what do we do? And let me first tell you what happens when a child is born. Within 4 5 months, the child starts uh, you know turning around and slowly crawling. You will see when the minute the child, actually even before starting crawling, the child is very, very inquisitive, wants to touch everything, wants to take it into its mouth, then crawling, then the child starts walking, will touch everything, will want to know, will try and open up toys to see what's happening. So what does it show? That every child is born with curiosity. Curiosity is built in our genes, and it's an important thing. Without curiosity, humans would not have reached where they have reached today. So curiosity is extremely important. And because children are curious, you will find the minute that they start talking, they will ask questions. And it's very important for us as parents to answer those questions in in a way in a way the child will understand. However, what do? We begin to, as the child grows up and starts asking more and more questions, what do parents normally do? They'll tell the child, oof, keep quiet. You're asking too many questions. We were asked to do this and we did. Just keep your mouth shut and do this. Don't ask too many questions. That begins at home. The child goes to school, and in the primary school itself, and if the child asks any question, and as the child grows up in class, in class, and moves to higher classes, if the child asks question, what does the teacher do? You ask too many questions. You are a naughty child. Sit down. Don't ask questions. So the child stops asking question. So there's tremendous pressure on the child at home and in the school to ask questions. I know, for example, when girls get their first period, they're asked to do some things. The child asks the mother, but why? Isn't it natural? Why should we do all of this? The mother will say, keep your mouth shut. This is how we did. This is how I learned to do it. This is what my mother did. So you will keep your mouth shut and do exactly what I'm asking you to do. Don't ask questions. So curiosity is destroyed. Asking questions becomes a big problem. So we begin to destroy this in our homes and our schools. That's something that we have to be, mindful about, and the change must really begin from there. You can't ask a grown-up person to suddenly change, but there also one could try. So what does one do? You ask a person something, the person says something, and it's really unscientific. You have to spend a little time and show proof and evidence how unscientific that person is in believing what is happening. So some people, when you show proof, they understand that, oh, I fell for a falsity. It requires a lot of patience. I would imagine that we spend more time with children, with adults, to the point that it is feasible. Bring truth out in front of them, show them evidence, and see. Some people change, and some people begin to see what truth is. It's a very hard task, but that's how we need to do this.
Hello.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
So while conducting a scientific programs and so many conducting meetings, so sometimes activities are arrested by the police and put in the jail. So how to face the and how to tackle that problem, and how to come out from the problems, that problem.
Well, Narayan, you're asking a very, very difficult question. So, Balnarayan, what is happening is that today in this country, if you want to hold a talk by an eminent person, be it a historian or a political scientist or a sociologist or a scientist, depending on what they're going to speak, it is difficult to get a venue. Even if a venue is given to you at the last minute, they will withdraw it, because we know we are in a situation that we have in. It's any autocratic government will try to take away everything, your freedom of speech, your freedom to ask questions, and that's what we are going through. And so it is not easy times, but within this, if you want to do something, you can still do. Imagine what happened when the British were here. Was it easy for people to meet, to plan, to talk to each other, to talk about their problems, to show the rest of the world, not the rest of the world, but at least fellow beings in the country, that what kind of exploitation was happening? They were not given, venues easily. They couldn't speak from any platform. The minute the Britishers got to know, they would have had to pay very heavy price. But people did find ways. So we will have to find ways. And people are finding ways. All of us cannot get scared and sit down. If all of us get scared and sit down and keep silent and don't talk to each other about what's happening, then we have already given in. We can't do that. As far as we are concerned, we have grown older, our lives are almost over. What about children? What about young people? What are they coming in? So it's not an easy fight. It's a difficult fight, but find your ways of doing it. And I'm sure where there is a will, there is a way. It's going to be even more difficult, but we will have to find ways. You asked about government, if the government will help you. Do you really think a government that believes that all of science that we know today was known in the Vedic times to actually help you to take the knowledge of science to people? Do you believe that, people who are responsible for untruths and fake news will want you to speak truth? No. We know what has happened to the data scientist of the Institute of Population Studies. The people in power don't want to see data. They don't want to see what actual census data of this country shows them, because it bores holes through their claims of all kinds of achievements that they've had. Data shows exactly the opposite. So what did they do? Remove the director, suspend the director. We live in very difficult times, and it's going to be even more difficult. So don't expect help to come easily. I know for sure that one very well-known journalist was called by the student body in Allahabad University, not today. I'm talking about 2015, 2016. Was called to give a talk, and at the last minute, they said they took away the venue. The university authority took away the venue and said, sorry, so-and-so cannot come inside and give a talk. You know what the students did? the students went outside the compound wall of, where was this? Allahabad University, put up some boxes. On the box, this gentleman stood without a mic and spoke, and everyone heard his speech. We saw this happening in JNU. People were going and giving talks there. The authorities were very upset. But so they came down heavily on JNU. It's going to happen more and more. But we will have to find ways of circumventing that problem. And humans are very ingenious. They will find ways if there is a will. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you, madam. You are giving a wonderful answer, and it's a very difficult question. You said already, but easily to clearly that question to answer. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Very well said, ma'am. As you have said, when you want a change in the system, actually it won't come from any ruler or any politician. It should come from the society itself. When the society changes, automatically the leader or whoever is the deciding person there, they will have to change as per the system. So change should start, and we should have more and more motivation among the society only. Only then definitely the politicians will have to change, and the system will definitely have a positive change. So if there are no more questions, I think we can close this session. Thank you very much, ma'am. Though it was a first time I have directly interacted with you, I heard a few of your speeches previously. I'm really very happy to have got this opportunity to talk about PM Bhargava garu through you. And I'm sure all the audience, whoever sees this video or listens to this, will definitely get inspired and at least have a little change in their life, and that will definitely have an impact on the society also. Thank you very much, madam. Thank you very much, Ramesh garu. మీరు కూడా చాలా మంచి విషయాలు చెప్పారు. చాలా మందికి చాలా అర్థమయ్యేలాగా, చాలా ఇన్స్పైరింగ్ గా విజ్ఞాన దర్శిని తరఫున చాలా మంచి కార్యక్రమాలు జరుపుతున్నారు. ఇలాంటివి ఇంకా ఎక్కువ మంది చేస్తూ ఉంటే డెఫినెట్ గా సమాజంలో మార్పు అనేది వస్తుంది. సో దెర్ ఈస్ నో thinking skeptically or no negative thoughts. You have to just go forward with positive thinking, and definitely we can make a change in the society. Thank you. We shall end the session now.